Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rest and Revive webinar on nutrition and sleep. My name is Miriana, but I typically go by Mira, sort of the producer of the Rest and Revive campaign. Welcome. If you have any questions, feel free to put that in the Q&A box. If you have any general questions about the campaign, please feel free to email me. I'm very readily available. And with that, I want to pass the baton off to Michele.
Thank you, Mira. Morning, everybody, and welcome to Rest and Revival's nutrition tips for a restful sleep. I hope everybody had a good night's sleep last night, and if not, you're in the right place. All right, so like Mira said, if you have any questions, please feel free to input them in the Q&A box at the bottom, and one of our lovely panelists will bring it to my attention and we will help you answer your question as quickly as possible. Just a little introduction for our panelists. My name is Michele Daniele, and I am a dietetic intern for the Be Well Solutions Corporate Wellness Program. And with me today is Linda Adams, RD, registered dietitian from Occupational Health, and Connie Tan, who's a program coordinator for staff and faculty health and well-being. And she was one of our main organizers for this event. And I think we are good to go to start. It's 10:03. So with that, we're going to get started with our topic. And first and foremost, why should we look at nutrition for sleep? So it is very interesting. It turns out that nutrition and sleep are rather closely interconnected. Research shows that people who don't get enough sleep are actually more likely to have bigger appetites due to their leptin levels, which is the hormone that regulates whether or not you feel full or not. It actually falls when you below normal standards when you don't have enough sleep. And when that falls, you feel more hunger. And there's also an increasing amount of evidence showing that sleep has a profound influence on our dietary choices every day. You get stuck very quickly on this very unhelpful cycle of feeling really, really tired, waking up the next morning, and not really wanting to think about the food choices that we make because we're very, very tired. We don't want to make those choices, or we just can't be bothered. So both cross-sectional and epidemiological studies have demonstrated that those who sleep less consume more energy-rich foods. So that's more saturated fats, more refined carbohydrates. We consume less vegetables, and we have more irregular eating patterns. And this just doesn't help at all, especially since our psychological manifestations of fatigue, sleep, and hunger are very similar in our brains. So when you feel sleepy, you might actually think that you are hungry and instead go for the fridge rather than instead to your bed where you need a nice good nap. So this just creates a very unhelpful cycle, a very unpleasant cycle of eating poorly, sleeping less or not as well, and then waking up the next morning and repeating it all over again. And this is not a good time. And it's sadly a problem that a lot of us Americans are facing more regularly than what our doctors would probably care for us to see. And in order to break that cycle, we often have to look at and consider working with what is called our circadian rhythm. Now, our circadian rhythm is that 24-hour internal clock that runs in the back of our brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it is what directs and determines whether you feel sleepy or alert through the day or the night. Now, this is regulated in part by this cluster of neurons. So it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus of the brain, which you can see in the picture in the bottom left-hand corner. And it takes its cues from outside factors, namely the sun and the moon. So when it's dark at night, your eyes send a signal to the hypothalamus that it's time to feel tired. And your brain, in turn, will send a signal to your body to release melatonin, which is the hormone that makes you feel tired. So that's when your circadian rhythm tends to coincide with the cycles of daytime and nighttime. And with it, our metabolism flows that way as well. So humans are very diurnal animals. So when we are awake and when it is light outside, our metabolism revs up and it goes to work. And it keeps you energized throughout the entire day. And inversely, when it is nighttime and when we sleep, our body goes into a fasting state. Our metabolism really slows down And our calories and our energy goes from our muscles into our central nervous system and our brain so that we recover for the next day to come. So what happens when we disrupt this cycle? Well, if we are awake at 2 a.m. eating, we disrupt the circadian rhythm and our metabolism is disrupted as well. And studies have found that a meal that is eaten at night generates a much more exaggerated response by our body. Our glucose and lipid response in particular, so our sugar and our fat response, goes completely out of whack. It responds much more extremely than what you would have seen if you had eaten that meal at 2 p.m. rather than 2 a.m. When your body is awake at night, it does not adjust well. So your digestion, your thermoregulation, and your hormone function especially goes completely off kilter. Your daily routines, what you eat and drink, the medications you take, how you schedule your days, and how you choose to spend your evenings, all of this really flows and impacts your circadian rhythm. And in turn, it will impact your quality of sleep. So now that we have a little bit more of a background about the circadian rhythm and how the nutrition really plays an important role and is tied together with it, we're going to go into our nutrition tips. Now, of course, if you have any specific questions related to nutrition as we're going through these tips, feel free to put in the Q&A box, raise your hand, and one of the other moderators, either Linda or Connie, will let me know they have a question, and we can go right into it. All right. So with that, we're going to move into our first tip, which is eating meals around the same time each day, especially our breakfast and our dinner. Now, eating is a great way for your circadian rhythm to know when you are supposed to be awake and when you're supposed to be working. Consistency is really key here. The more you establish this daily routine, the quicker your body recognizes the pattern and knows when to start your metabolism in the morning and when it should really start to slow down and prepare you for sleep. The size and the composition of the meals, we will go into a little bit more later, but establishing a routine when you wake up, when you go to bed, and when you eat your meals really brings your circadian rhythm into a more manageable framework for you to work with. The reason why we're focusing more on breakfast and dinner is because those are the two meals that people will typically eat in a day that frame are when we begin to wake and when we begin to sleep. Eat breakfast around the same time, say between 7 and 8 in the morning every single day, your metabolism knows that's when the day is started. If you eat your dinner between like 5 and 7 o'clock, the circadian rhythm knows that that is probably the last meal you're going to eat for the day. It will take that energy, use it, and then it goes, okay, we've managed to hit the end of the cycle. Let's go ahead and bring it down to a little bit more. All right, so next tip, consuming a diet high in fiber and low in saturated fat. Now this one might be a little bit hard to implement from the get-go. Unfortunately, the standard American diet, which we call the SAD diet for short, is completely the opposite. It is unfortunately very high in saturated fat and low in fruits and vegetables and that wonderful dietary fiber. Saturated fat has been very strongly linked to cardiovascular disease and poor sleep scores especially. And in the absence of fruits and vegetables, it is very difficult to obtain many of the very healthful fruits and vitamins that the human body needs in order to function at its best. When it comes to any specific dietary patterns, scientific research has really focused on looking on the effects of the Mediterranean diet, which has been seen as one of the more healthful eating patterns recommended by the dietary guidelines for Americans. And it promotes a lot of healthful benefits and prevents chronic disease. Because it is so low in saturated fat and high in dietary fiber, it is seen as a very anti-inflammatory eating pattern. Now, the Mediterranean diet is a very inclusive and flexible eating pattern. So there really is no single way in order to follow it. But the main takeaways from the diet is that it focuses less on red meats and proteins and focuses more on eating more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, beans, nuts and seeds, and very healthy fats like fatty fish and olive oil, which are rich in omega-3 fatty acids and polyunsaturated fats. which have been proven to be very anti-inflammatory and support a very healthy brain function, which our hypothalamus will love, and also supports our heart health. So it reduces our risk for cardiovascular disease later in life. Now, the Mediterranean diet has a reputation for being expensive in the United States. But even if we just model our plates to emphasize more fruits and vegetables rather than focusing entirely on the carbohydrates and the protein, will help emulate and actually follow the Mediterranean diet without having to break our budget every single day. The picture on the right that you see on your screen really follows what is called My Plate, which is the tool created by the USDA to help visualize what a healthy plate of food would look like in a daily basis. Half the plate, you can see, is filled with vegetables, and the other half is split between our carbohydrates and our protein. And by doing this simple change of how we arrange our plate of food, we can help follow this suggestion of eating more fruits and vegetables and eating less saturated fats. Now on to something that is probably a little more familiar with everybody when you talk about sleep, is talking about caffeine. So limiting caffeine intake to before the afternoon. That's pretty hard for some people. I know a lot of us, we really rely on caffeine to get through our day, especially continuously after that lunchtime slump. But according to the National Sleep Foundation, consuming more than 3 cups of caffeine a day can actually impact your sleep. And this is because it actually takes a long time for the body to metabolize caffeine, usually about 6 hours or so. So eating or drinking foods that have a substantial amount of caffeine isn't really recommended if, for say, your bedtime is at 10 p.m. If we go back 6 hours, that's about 4 p.m. So this can really and unintentionally impact someone's sleep schedule. That's not to say that everybody is going to respond this way with caffeine. Caffeine response is a very highly individualized response and is actually determined greatly in part by our genetics. So it's really important to find a caffeine intake that really works with you. Now, there are a lot of different foods that contain caffeine. Obviously you've got Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has caffeine. So does coffee itself, and teas, black teas and green teas all contain coffee. And there's also, dark chocolate and energy drinks, and all of us use these in some fashion in our day. So keeping in mind of what you intake that might have caffeine will really go a long way in finding if that is the one thing that is keeping you up at night. Now, an interesting thing about caffeine is the caffeine that you would see in coffee is different from the caffeine you would see in tea. If you probably notice this, if after having a cup of really strong coffee, you go into that very high energy spike, and then once you hit that top, it plummet very quickly with your energy levels with coffee. In tea, the caffeine response is actually slightly different. It's a much more gradual uptake to that high energy peak. And when it hits that top, it doesn't plummet as strongly as caffeine seen in coffee. It is actually much more gradual and brings you back to more normal feelings, more normal levels of restfulness. And that is because of the polyphenols and the antioxidants accompanied with the caffeine in the tea leaf itself, which is very helpful. So if you need that caffeine boost a lot more during the afternoon, you really want to go for that extra cup of coffee, it might be a good suggestion to try, instead of drinking that 4th cup of coffee, going for a green tea or a black tea that might not have as much caffeine, but it will help bring you up and down from that energy boost a lot more gradually than with that extra cup of coffee. So next tip is about water and hydration. So staying hydrated, but not too hydrated. Now this seems a little bit confusing at first, but hydration is very important when you're going to sleep, because dehydration can cause a slew of different problems. It can make your mouth and your nose very, very dry. So you might start to snore, and that would definitely keep your partner up. So you've got snoring coming up, and then you wake up in the next morning, you feel very hoarse, and your throat is very, very dry and uncomfortable. And you can wake up, and it also would wake you up in the middle of the night if you are suddenly extremely thirsty. Our body absolutely needs water to survive, so we'll do everything it can to ensure that you would get water. If you're someone who tends to wake up in the middle of the night because you need to go to the bathroom, well, then there's ways that you can help prevent that from doing so while still staying hydrated before you go to bed. First and foremost is eating your fruits and vegetables, because those do contain a lot of water, a lot of unintended water that we don't think about. Another one is drinking water before bed, but not too soon. So it's generally a good idea to drink water within 2 hours of going to bed, especially if you are prone to getting up in the middle of the night. But anything before that, like drinking a big glass of water before we go to bed entirely, will definitely wake you up if you're someone who does wake up in the middle of the night unintentionally. So keeping that in mind, that staying hydrated throughout the entire day will keep you from drinking a lot of water just before you crawl under the sheets. Okay, and next we have our fifth tip, which is don't eat your largest meal before bedtime, and eating while it is still light outside. Now, all of us have different appetites, and we can really take advantage of the current situation that we're unfortunately a part of and having to stay home and more, which means that we are able to shift our eating times and shift our meal times and the amount of food that we eat to earlier times of the day, because we have to stay home at home more. So shifting to eating our biggest meal to more close to lunchtime and eating a smaller meal for dinner in the evening can really help you feel that overstuffed feeling that can cause pain and discomfort in the middle of the night and keep you up because your body is digesting. So during our sleep, the body is in a very fasting state, and it promotes the release of glucose, and our insulin resistance responds differently and goes from our muscles to our brain, again, with that circadian rhythm. This means that our body doesn't really want to focus on digestion during the middle of the night. So when we eat a really, really big meal just before bed, our body doesn't really want to deal with it. And when it is forced to do so, you might not get as restful and as deep a sleep as you may want. A smaller meal or a meal earlier in the evening will help prevent heartburn or acid reflux as well, if that is something that you struggle with at night. Or a meal, a lunch, and a smaller meal for dinner. And bring to our next tip, going to number 6. If you're hungry at night, eating a light and healthy snack. So obviously, if you are so used to eating a huge meal before bed, might be a bit of an adjustment. So eating something very small or light before bed isn't necessarily the worst thing that you could possibly do. It is far from it, actually. During nighttime sleep, the body is, again, in that fasting state. So because it doesn't want to deal with more heavy foods, it's typically better to have something that is much lighter, like say a light fruit snack or a light vegetable snack, maybe some carrot chips with hummus, is a great way to help prevent your blood sugar from spiking and disrupting that circadian rhythm that is trying to signal to you that it is time for bed. Acute experimental studies have found that meals eaten at night generates a much more rapid response. So helping prevent that with a light snack, fruits, vegetables, crackers, maybe a little bit of cheese will help with that. Meal timing and food choices at night, rather than the calorie intake, is a key contributor to also the increased risk of cardiovascular disease that you can also see with shift workers, with nurses who consistently work at night. And it also means that eating a very, very substantial proportion of the meals during the night time actually contributes to more health issues later in life. And this, of course, has to do with our circadian rhythm. All right, we go into alcohol. So minimizing our excessive alcohol consumption before bed. Now, the 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommends that women typically stick to 1 drink per day, and men stick to at most 2 drinks per day. So alcohol is actually considered a depressant. So it can help you fall asleep. That being said, alcohol is very, very bad for keeping you asleep. High alcohol consumption beyond the recommended 1 or 2 drinks a day, or even, and especially actually 2 intoxication, can cause a lot more arousals at night. And it can also be dangerous. If you wake up in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom and you are still intoxicated and it's dark outside, you can get hurt. All right. And that was the last of our tips. Like I said, we have a couple more things to go over, especially when it comes to herbs and supplements. So scientific research on the effectiveness of home remedies like drinking that warm glass of milk, herbal teas just before bed, or even multivitamins and melatonin supplements is not really definitive. Although there does seem to be some research linked to the overall micronutrient levels in our bloodstream, seems to be a small connection between having free-flowing iron, magnesium, and zinc in our bloodstream to more restful sleep is not really definitive at this time. So at this moment, there really is no multivitamin supplement recommendation when it comes to helping you to sleep. And even though there doesn't seem to be a lot of scientific research about the effectiveness of having, that warm cup of tea before bed that's nice and soothing, if you find that that is something that helps you and helps you feel more relaxed before going to bed, which is a very crucial part in helping you fall asleep, there is no reason why you can't continue to do so. If it helps you, try it. Now, something that is very prevalent in the market right now is melatonin supplements. Now, melatonin supplements have been shown to work, but keeping in mind that they are highly unregulated. Unfortunately, the FDA doesn't have as strict a regulation when it comes to vitamins and supplements as they do with, say, the ingredients that are in the nutrition label on your chips. Some melatonin supplements may unfortunately not contain ingredients that are listed on your product label. In fact, a 2017 study tested 31 different melatonin supplements bought from grocery stores and pharmacies throughout the country. And for most of the supplements, the amount of melatonin in the product didn't match what was actually on the product label of the container. And also about 26% of the supplements contained serotonin, an artificial serotonin, which is a hormone that, if it is produced naturally by the body, does not produce any harmful effects. But if it is synthesized and even in small quantities and low levels of hormone, if it's synthesized and then added to products for ingestion, it can have some harmful effects on the human body. Now, melatonin supplements you should really treat it as if it is a medication itself. So it can have side effects. Some common side effects are headaches the next morning, some dizziness, some nausea, feeling grogginess in the next day, or even some people describe it as feeling hungover as well. And melatonin is a natural chemical. This is something that your body does produce, but it is important to treat it like it is medication when you take it orally. It is possible for your melatonin tablets to interact harmfully with other drugs. And if you're taking medication, melatonin can possibly reduce the effectiveness of your medication. It could trigger some negative side effects that you would not have otherwise. And it could also change the way that your body metabolizes your medication entirely. So if you are thinking of using melatonin and you are on medication, it is a good idea to have that conversation with your doctor and ensure that the medication that your doctor is placing you on will not interfere with your melatonin supplementation. Another thing to keep in mind is that melatonin tablets in the market can come in a wide range of dosages. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of research at the moment about the possible negative side effects that comes from long-term use of high dosage melatonin. So it can be a little bit of a tricky game. The National Sleep Foundation recommends that keeping your melatonin dosage between 0.2 milligrams and 5 milligrams for adults only, and taking it within about an hour before bed does not seem to have a negative long-term side effect. That being said, taking more than 5 milligrams without a doctor's consultation is definitely not recommended. On the market right now, melatonin supplements can go as high as 10 milligrams. So that is something to keep in mind. Even if you're someone who really struggles to sleep and really want to go for the stronger dosage, might be a good idea to talk with your doctor beforehand. And there was a recent study that came out about a year ago that demonstrated that those who take melatonin supplements in extremely high doses can unfortunately negatively impact their body's ability to produce their own melatonin. So if your body continuously gets this high dosage of melatonin orally, it takes it as a signal to not produce enough on its own. So if you are looking for just a small pick-me-up every now and then, melatonin would be very helpful. If you are someone who takes it continuously, you might accidentally end up becoming a lot more dependent on that oral supplement than you would care to be normally. Next, a little note on tryptophan. So tryptophan is very closely related, I think, with Thanksgiving dinners, especially with Thanksgiving turkeys. It's got that Thanksgiving turkey effect. It's one of the essential amino acids the body uses in order to produce the proteins that we need. It is essential, which means that we need to intake it orally because our body cannot produce it on its own. It is very known for its role in the production of the nervous system messengers related to relaxation and restfulness and sleep, especially in the as a precursor for serotonin, which goes along in the body to produce melatonin, which is very important for our mood and our sleep patterns. Now, it is important to note that we don't really need to intake a lot of tryptophan in order to produce our serotonin and our melatonin. In fact, we need very small amounts. We typically, Americans, we consume a lot more than what is actually needed. So a lot of our tryptophan ends up not getting used, and it will actually be excreted by the body. But there are a lot of foods that can help impact the availability of the tryptophan to be ingested, to be uptook by the body. So there's a lot of different foods out there, more than just your turkey or your poultry. You've got nuts and seeds, especially, pumpkin seeds is a very high precursor for tryptophan. Bananas as well contains quite a bit of tryptophan. So do soy foods like soybeans and tofu. Cheese, especially hard cheese, contains quite a bit amount of tryptophan. You've got red meat, of course, and you've got fish and shellfish, as do uncooked oats and bran. So having that oatmeal is really good, or maybe that nighttime bowl of cereal contains some tryptophan as well. And so do lentils and beans and eggs. So there are a lot of different foods out there that can help you get that tryptophan boost if you don't want to just stick to your Thanksgiving turkey throughout the day. Now, the last topic we're going to go over is related to shift workers. So those are the people who stay up during the night and sleep through the day. People who, like our nurses or our construction workers who work mostly at night. Now, they have a bit of a tightrope to walk along, because despite being awake, and perhaps you do this rather regularly even though you might be a shift worker, you've done it for years, the body's metabolism is very, very reluctant to change. And so is our circadian rhythm. This is a pattern of behavior that is established. We're very young when we are babies. So your body's metabolism will try to stick to typical nighttime behavior as much as possible. So when it comes to food choices and trying to both stay awake in the middle of the night and then being able to fall asleep the next day can be a little bit tricky and takes a little bit more forethought. Eating a more complete, much bigger meal before the shift starts, and then choosing only smaller portioned light snacks or very small meals during the shift work will help keep the circadian rhythm and keep your metabolism working a lot more optimally and not disrupt the rhythm entirely. So choosing fruits and vegetables, again, and more complex carbohydrates instead of sugary and fatty foods like chocolate or pizza can help prevent a extreme metabolism response and blood sugar response where you get that really sharp energy boost and then you plummet very, very quickly and almost uncomfortably. So you get a lot more energy and you also get a lot more nutrition in that way. Drinking plenty of fluids to help prevent dehydration while you are working at night will also be rather crucial to think about, because we are more likely to dehydrate ourselves when we work outside of our circadian rhythm than we would if we were typical 9 to 5 worker and getting 8 hours of sleep a day. So another tip I would have for shift workers also is if you do consume caffeine, which you probably would during your night shift, a helpful tip would be to take your caffeine, whether that is a cup of coffee or an energy drink, and then going and having a 15-minute nap, because there usually is a lag before that caffeine kicks in. So consuming the coffee, having a short nap, by the time you wake up from that nap, that caffeine will already have kicked in and you'll be really ready to go. Okay, and with that, that comes to the end of the presentation. So just a little quick summary of what we talked about. So we talked about your circadian rhythm and how important it is to work with your circadian rhythm throughout the day, because it really does regulate all sorts of human processes in the body, including, your thermoregulation, your hormone, and your metabolism, which is what we are interested in today. So really remembering to timing your meals in a consistent and sustainable way for your schedule will do you a lot of good. So does eating a lot more fruits and vegetables, a lot less saturated fats, and timing your coffee and your caffeine intake in a way that it does not impact when your body has decided that it wants to go and rest and start to sleep. Staying hydrated, very, very important. And timing the size of your meals. So not eating that biggest meal, say at 8 p.m. when you're going to go to bed at 10 p.m. So switching the largest meal of the day to being maybe 5 p.m. or even at lunchtime, and only having something much lighter towards the end of the night so your body doesn't have to worry about digestion when it should be worried more about sleep. If you're hungry at night, sticking to light, nutritious snacks that won't really give you that sharp spike in blood sugar. So again, your body can focus more on the circadian rhythm. Keeping the alcohol to something that is a lot more manageable, staying away from intoxication, because that will impact your sleep and also perhaps will be dangerous. And then also with the herbs and supplements, if you've got that herbal tea that you always go to help you feel relaxed, have at it. But if you were thinking about taking melatonin, sticking to a lower dosage and being sure to talk with your doctor if you want to go to a higher dosage, or if this is something that you want to take consistently throughout the day, throughout the week perhaps, would be very helpful. And I really do encourage you to talk with your doctors. And then lastly, tryptophan comes in a lot of different forms, and it comes in a lot of different foods beyond just your Thanksgiving turkey. And then shift workers, having to keep in mind that they need to keep their circadian rhythm in the forefront of their mind when they go and plan their meals. And with that, I believe we have time for any questions that you may have. Of course, if we don't get to them today, or if you don't have a question at the moment, but can think of one later on, feel free to email us at wellbeing@ucdavis.edu. We're more than happy to answer it, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can.
Thanks, Michelle. We have a question from the audience. So it's in regards to the Mediterranean diet. Mm-hmm. So is the Mediterranean diet the best for losing weight?
So losing weight, and when it comes to that, there really is no one way to lose weight. When losing weight is just simply balancing the amount of calories that you intake with the amount of calories that you burn off. So if we are looking to lose weight, we need to burn off or intake less calories than what we need. So the Mediterranean diet has been seen as very helpful for someone to lose weight, but it is not the end all be all. You may have success with other dietary patterns, or even not fully following the Mediterranean diet entirely. The nice thing about the Mediterranean diet is it does focus more on fruits and vegetable intake and on whole grains, which both have been shown to help someone lose weight, because the fruits and vegetables typically have less calories than, say, white rice. A huge plate of white rice is also a lot more helpful entirely. So Mediterranean diet is very helpful, but is not the end all be all to losing weight entirely. I believe during my slides, I talked about My Plate, which is the USDA tool, which focuses on half your plate being fruits and vegetables and the other half being split between your protein and your carbohydrates. That is a really great tool that you can use if you aren't able to follow or do not care to follow the Mediterranean diet entirely. That is a great way to help bring your portions into more focus and helping you reduce your calorie intake just because you're intaking more fruits and vegetables. I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. What is the recommended daily water intake?
Oh, good question. See, there's been a lot of different opinions about water intake. Some people say that you should intake, I believe it's like 8 glasses of water a day. Some people recommend that. Personally, I think it is a lot more individualized. So rather I think you should be drinking enough water that you don't feel thirsty. So if you're feeling thirsty, always drink water, because that is your body's greatest indicator that it needs it. Really is no end all be all for it. Again, it is very individualized. It depends on, what kind of environment do you live in? Are you currently in a very hot room? Are you exercising? Are you consuming lots of fruits and vegetables? Because that does include water as well. And your body, we don't think about that typically when it comes to staying hydrated, but fruits and vegetables, if you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, you're probably a lot more hydrated than you probably think. So really, I would take your personal indicator, which is feeling thirsty, as an indicator of how much water that you should drink. And interesting enough, keep in mind that our responses to fatigue and hunger are very closely related. So if you feel very, very hungry, you might be thirsty instead. So if you feel hunger in the middle of the day when typically you've just eaten maybe an hour before, it might be a nice idea to drink a glass of water and seeing if that gets rid of your hunger. So the body can get a little confused sometimes with its responses, because those responses like fatigue, hunger, thirst, they're very closely related. So it's really is no end all be all. It's just kind of taking a moment to recognize what is your body telling you, is what I would say when it comes to hydration.
Thank you. One other question, what should be considered when thinking about intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting, all right. So intermittent fasting is definitely been gaining a lot more popularity. And there are several different ways that you can do intermittent fasting. Some of them have, I believe, an 8-hour window. So choosing an 8-hour window to eat and then not eating for the rest of the 16 hours of the day. There's also, I know, different ways of doing it. Choosing to eat for several days and then skipping meals in a few days. There are a couple different ways to do intermittent fasting. And if you choose to do intermittent fasting, I would recommend that you talk with a doctor first and foremost, just to make sure that you don't have any underlying health conditions in which may negatively impact trying this out. And intermittent fasting is very interesting because in a way it is kind of modeled after our circadian rhythm. Just think about it. Your circadian rhythm, you are awake for, say, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then you essentially fast for the entire time that you are asleep. So intermittent fasting is, I guess I say, is a little more controlled response to our natural circadian rhythm. In terms of scientific research when it comes to whether or not it is the most effective way to handle, for instance, if you're looking for weight loss, there isn't really much research yet. That being said, it has been seen to be rather beneficial for helping someone control their urges and create a more sustainable pattern for their everyday life. So if you do try intermittent fasting and you find that it helps you, one, remember when you can eat, and it prevents unintended snacking that you may be trying to get under control more, I just see no reason why you can't talk it over with your doctor and seeing if that is something that you would really like to try.
Okay, we have a few more questions. So what are your thoughts and recommendations on napping during the day?
Napping during the day. So napping can definitely be very, very beneficial, especially short and consistent naps. So for instance, there is such a thing, it is possible to actually oversleep. And that is when you, for instance, if you typically sleep maybe 6-7 hours of the day, and one day you end up sleeping around 10 or even 12 hours, your body can have a lot of grogginess. You'll have a lot more extreme response when you may not feel as restful as you probably would think after sleeping for an extended period of time. So napping can create a response like that. That's not to say that there are times where napping is the greatest thing in the world. It really can be very beneficial, especially if you are feeling extreme dips in energy and you need a little bit of a pick-me-up. So I've seen research where they've tried to pin down exactly how much, or how long rather, a nap should be. And they can really vary, and it definitely depends on one, how tired you are to begin with, and two, how much energy or how your metabolism is responding. So I've not seen any research to say that napping is terrible for you. In fact, if you need a nap, you need a nap. But if you were looking to have, again, with that caffeine boost, if you're taking caffeine and you're feeling extremely tired and you don't want to wait for it to kick in, taking that short 15-20 minute nap before the caffeine can kick in is a nice way to put in the little nap for caffeine. But in terms of how it impacts your metabolism, it doesn't seem to. The research hasn't really seen that napping during the day has a horrible impact on a negative impact on your metabolism. But if you don't want to feel super groggy, napping for maybe 3-4 hours may not be the way to go.
Hi, Michelle. We have another question. Would you be concerned about eating a lot of fruits if someone is pre-diabetic?
Oh, okay. So for diabetes, especially when it comes to fruit, let's see. The big thing when it comes to when you're pre-diabetic is usually it is an indication of an out of control or a lack of an efficient insulin response, which is the response that your body has when your blood glucose increases. Linda, I might need a little help on this one when it comes to the difference between refined sugar and fructose. Have you seen that there is a huge difference between the two?
So I'm sorry right now about the background noise. They've got a wood chipper going outside of my house. But I am not concerned about eating a lot of fruit if you have someone told you you're pre-diabetic. If you are pre-diabetic, your body still has the insulin response to remove the sugar from your blood into the cells. Now, you may not want to eat fruit just on its own. Because if you provide protein and fat along with it, so say an apple and peanut butter or celery and peanut butter or string cheese and an apple, that protein and fat helps drag that simple sugar from the fruit, drag it down so that it doesn't have quite a high insulin response. I don't know, did that make sense?
I think it did, yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Michelle, we have another question. Looks like it's our last one. If anyone else has any more questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box. But I love this question. Are kombucha drinks healthy?
Kombucha, that is certainly a very popular food trend at the moment. So kombucha is a type of fermented tea. Has a lot of antioxidants because of this fermentation. So in terms of what science has said, I think it's a little too new of a food trend in order to have a lot of science to back it up. But kombucha can have a lot of helpful antioxidants from the tea that it is the base of, and then also with the fermentation that comes along with it. So it can have some helpful nutrients and nutritious properties along with it. So yeah, kombucha is pretty interesting in that regards.
Okay, it looks like that's all our questions right now in the Q&A box.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Let's see. Does anyone else have any questions? It can be questions about also the campaign while we're here. It could also be questions, of course, about nutrition, shift work. I love all the comments in the chat.
The movie Fargo. Very good. Well done.
Michelle, while we still have a few minutes, do you want to let everybody know about your upcoming presentation on June 17th?
Yes, so we are going to have another nutrition presentation next week on Wednesday, June 17. It's going to be at noon. It's going to be a lot like this format here, where it is a webinar, where I will be talking to you with a nice, lovely presentation to go along with it, and we'll have a Q&A section at the end. It is on food budgeting. So how do you save money or in order to buy more healthy foods? So eating more fruits and vegetables and whole grains seems like a great suggestion, but if it is going to really stretch your food budget or really cost a lot more than you are able to afford, then how do we navigate the supermarkets in order to save our money and still eat in a very healthful manner? So that is the next presentation that I will be doing. It is again on Wednesday, June 17th at noon on Wednesday. And we do have a registration link and a flyer that will be going out soon. So keep a weathered eye out for that.
And everybody, I also linked to the registration in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and register for that, you can do that already.
Thank you.
So yeah, it looks like we don't have any other questions. A lot of thank yous to you, Michelle. So thank you for such an informative presentation.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, and we hope everybody's enjoying the Rest and Revive campaign, and we look forward to seeing you on June 17th if you're interested in joining us. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm also going to, in the chat right now, link my email directly. So it's at the bottom of the Rest and Revive campaigns, but if you have any questions about the campaign, please don't hesitate to email me. If you have, questions about some of the resources that are linked, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks, everyone, for coming to the presentation today. Thank you, Michelle. It was excellent. Yeah, we have another thank you. Oh, I also realized I didn't actually state sort of my relevancy, so wanted to let everyone know I am a master's in public health student, class of 2020 actually, so just wanted to let everyone know a little bit more about my role in this Rest and Revive campaign. But yes, that was actually something else I wanted to ask. So Michelle, are we able to get a copy of the slides and then we can put it in the Rest and Revive archive?
Yes, I do have this presentation downloaded, so I will send that to you, Mira.
Awesome, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. I hope everybody has a lovely day, and I hope that these tips were helpful for you all. And I hope you all have great sleeps and a great rest of your day.